Hi there team, we run Coach Alexa here. We've had a question come in about cadence, kind of what it is, why do we care? So I thought I'd just give a quick overview about what it's all about. So cadence means how many times your feet are hitting the floor in a minute when you're running. So if you have a phone or a watch that you wear when you're running to track your runs that has an accelerometer in it, it will be measuring how many times your feet are hitting the floor in a minute. And it's a fairly accurate measurement from those devices. It's actually taking the measurement off the movement of your wrist as your arms go back and forth, but it's pretty impossible to run with your arms doing a different rhythm to your legs, so it's pretty accurate. Why is it an interesting statistic? It's probably one of the most reliable pieces of data that sort of wearable running technology like your GPS watch can capture, that has some sort of reflection on your running form. And also from a coach's perspective, when I've got access to people's data, can tell some interesting stories about their runs. So a couple of ways that I might use cadence data, for example, if you're on a long run and you're really kind of maybe pushing yourself on a little bit in terms of that distance, that run's a bit fatiguing, that last few miles didn't feel great. One of the things I can potentially see in some people's running when they're fatiguing is that cadence, that rate at which their feet are hitting the floor slows as they're getting tired. So it can be an indicator of fatigue in those longer runs. It's also nice to see sometimes in interval sessions, and again, this doesn't happen with everyone, but with some runners, you'll see the cadence increasing as they run faster and decreasing as they do their recoveries. And again, if you watch how that peak and trough is kind of tracking throughout the run, if that cadence peak that they're hitting in their faster intervals starts just tailing off again, that's a sign potentially of a little bit of fatigue creeping in for that runner. Everyone is different though, so this won't happen for everyone. There's a lot of talk around cadence in the running community and a magic number of 180 steps per minute. And this came out of a study that was done a few years ago now that came up with this conclusion that purely from a kind of idealistic biomechanical perspective, that looked like it might be the most efficient cadence for all runners, no matter how long you've been running, what event you're running for, from sprints up to marathons. I think in practice, what we see as coaches is that there's a lot more natural variety, and not everybody should be aiming for 180. You can just imagine, can't you, sort of a small framed petite person with maybe shorter legs versus somebody who's much taller, got longer legs, longer levers, the distances and events that you're running for. There's loads of different factors in your body and in your training that might determine what your cadence is. Some guidance that comes out of the world of physiotherapy, however, is that if your cadence is starting to go sort of below, when you're running, walking is different, when you're running starting to go below the sort of 150 to low 150s mark, then it might be worth looking at your cadence and increasing it, because when it drops to that sort of level, that can potentially be an indicator that there are other aspects of your running form that are causing that. So when I see somebody that I get to work with in person who's got a pretty low cadence, sort of mid to low 150s or below in terms of steps per minute, then that's the point at which I might start looking at other aspects of their running form. And often there's something else going on in their running form to cause that low cadence. So the fix isn't necessarily run with a higher cadence. It might be all sorts of other stuff going on. I often get runners approaching me saying, "Oh, I've read about this 180, or I think I should increase my cadence." And the question is always why, and what's the rationale for doing that? It's a little bit dangerous to kind of just do it because you fancy it. Always have a chat with a physiotherapist or a coach if you can, because then you can actually start to unpick the reasons why it might be, and whether actually increasing the cadence is the right answer to whatever the sort of the root cause is of whatever's going on with your running. That said, if that is a conversation you've had with your coach, the top tip I would give, if there is a good, reason that you've talked with a coach or a physio about increasing your cadence, it's about taking it really gently. So when we adjust our cadence, it sounds like quite a small thing, just, turning our feet over a little bit faster. But actually, it has quite profound knock-on effect on the rest of our running form. The body has to do things differently a little bit in order to have those feet turning around a little bit faster. So you do want to introduce it quite gradually, perhaps using, I use a musician's metronome in my coaching sessions that people can clip onto their tops. You can get free metronome apps. I think some watches even now can beep or buzz at you for particular cadences, but introduce it gently for short periods in 1 or 2 runs a week and very gradually build it. Because if you try and suddenly do all of your runs at a new cadence value, it's quite a shock to the system. Some muscles that haven't been doing as much recently are going to be asked to be doing more and we quite easily get overloaded. So I hope that's helpful. A little bit of a run through about all things cadence. If you've got any more questions, just drop me a line.